Birds World Burritos coming up in the 1 o'clock hour. I threw this question out earlier today. Who will the first Utah football player taken in the 2020 draft be? 2019 draft's done. 5 guys taken. First player was Marquise Blair, which I kind of thought going in would probably be the case, though Cody Barton was, with some of the stuff he told us last week, kind of planted a little seed in my mind. But it was Marquise and then Cody. Utah's going to have 3 or 4 guys that they have a chance to be late first day, certainly early second day guys. Jalen Johnson, Zach Moss, Lecky Fotu, Bradley and Nye. Julian Blackman might even be in that mix too. So I'm asking you guys, who do you think the first player taken in next year's draft will be from Utah? Right now, Nye. Julian Blackman might even be in that mix too. So I'm asking you. I don't have any doubt Jalen's right in that mix. I'm just surprised that the number is that high. I think a lot of you, Zach Moss, by the way, at 18%, Lecky Fotu at 6%. I think some of you are sleeping on Lecky Fotu. Defensive tackles that can do what he can do are at such a premium. Remember the last guy for the University of Utah that was taken in the first round that high. Who was it? It was Star Lotulelei, if I'm not mistaken. Am I right, Mitch? I should know these things off the top of my head. Obviously, Alex went first, but Lotulelei, by the way, would have been a top 10 pick. Remember, they had that heart information that was inaccurate on him. They kind of dropped him down. I think the Panthers took the Star at 13. I think that was right. I don't know if somebody will go quite that high, but that's what I'm telling you. If you look at this year's draft, guys like Ed Oliver, Quentin Williams, these are defensive tackles. I think there were 3, maybe 4. I'll go back and look at it. Defensive tackles, interior linemen that were taken before any cornerback was. And that's not to throw any shade Jalen's way because he's fantastic and he's got a great chance to be taken in the first round. But I'm just telling you, don't sleep on Lecky Fotu. He is a freak of nature. There's no probably about it. He's got better measurables than Star Lotulelei did. He's taller. He's got longer arms. He's probably a little bit faster or quicker. Now, Star was fantastic. Star worked he was a big dude, but wasn't as big as Lecky. So I'm just saying, don't sleep on Fotu. Moss will be in the mix. I think Bradley and Nye will be too if he has a big year. I mean, if you get double-digit sacks, let's see Bradley and Nye gets 13 or 14 sacks in the Pac-12 conference. That's a really good year. You back that up with a year like he had this year, and that gets you on radar screens. So, anyway, vote on the Twitter poll. It's up at ESPN 700 Bill. That's at ESPN 700 Bill to get you in and on the program. We'll talk to Steve Bartle of UteZone.com. Utah got a new commitment today. They landed a grad transfer offensive lineman out of Marshall, Alex Locklear. 6'5", 340-pounder. Played in 35 games in his career at Marshall. Versatile guy. I think he can play guard and tackle at 6'5", 340. So Bartle, I think, has a write-up up at UteZone. So we'll pick his brain a little bit and may have talked to Alex Locklear too. So we'll get to that coming up. And Yogi's going to join us. I'll ask that question to Yogi that I was just asking to you guys about who he thinks the first Ute off the board next year in the draft might be. And then we'll talk some other Pac-12 stuff as well. He's done all the spring football stuff, I think, is now done around the Pac-12. I think everybody's now wrapped up since we're, 2 days away from May 1st? Is it Wednesday, May 1st? Goodness gracious. Sammy's giving the big thumbs up in the other room, the intern, because she's probably done with finals. That's why she's so excited. But anyway, we'll talk to Yogi about some Pac-12 and some NFL stuff as well and get his thoughts. He knows Pete Carroll, by the way. Yogi was on Pete Carroll's staff at USC for a few years. So he knows what Pete likes and what he looks for. And he's still, I would say, still very close with Pete and that Seattle Seahawks program. So we'll talk to him about both Cody Barton and Jordan Ungasiva and obviously Marquise Blair going to the Seattle Seahawks. We'll do that coming up here on the program in just a couple of minutes here in the 1 o'clock hour. Just a reminder, Tour de Brew Talk coming up this weekend. Utah's premier bike and brew tour, beer festival as well down at the Gateway Plaza. If you want tickets to ride in the Tour de Brew Talk, go to tourdebrewtalk.com. Want more information about the Tour de Brew Talk? Go to our website, ESPN700sports.com. It's free and open to everybody. It's down at the Gateway, all ages. Everybody can go. If you want to ride in the event, though, you do have to be 21 or older. It's the Tour de Brew Talk this weekend all over town and down at the Gateway Plaza for Saturday from noon till 7. All right, let's grab a break. When we come back on the other side, our buddy Yogi Roth will join us for the Pac-12 Networks. His thought on the draft, some guys around the league, some Utah guys, some NFL stuff as well. All right here on Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700. We're ready to roll. Yogi Roth will join us momentarily here on the program. Steve Bartle, bottom of the hour, will have a 4-pack of RSL and Portland Timbers tickets and a $20 gift card to Freebird's World Burritos to give away on Topical Trivia today. RSL came up a little short yesterday. Lost 2-1 at the LA Galaxy. Zlatan Ibrahimovic was a bit of an ass after the game. Stormed into the locker room, tried to apologize to Natum. After he had tried to injure and threaten Natum out on the field. Natum was having none of it. I don't blame him. Zlatan is a great player. Great player doesn't give you the right to do some of the things he did or said yesterday. Had no problem with it. But at the end of the day, RSL actually played okay. They didn't play badly. On the road, had some chances they've got to be able to put away. There's no doubt about that. But that's a good LA team that now, by the way, is 6-0 at home. And they didn't lose that game by a lot yesterday, and they played very well. In fact, in the second half, save that Zlatan goal that ended up being the game winner. RSL probably outplayed and was the better team for much of that game on Sunday afternoon. They'll be back in action coming up on Saturday night at Rio Tinto. They'll take on the Portland Timbers. 7 o'clock start time. We'll have the Weight Vision pregame show at 6. Lauren Mason-Beck and Spencer Warren. And then Jay Nolly and I will have the call from Rio Tinto Stadium coming up on Saturday at 7 right here on ESPN 700. So we'll see if a little home cooking does the boys well as they get back home, and we'll see how much longer RSL will be out without Nick Rimando. Though I will say this, Andrew Putna, who was on the show with us last week, did a really good job. Loss wasn't on him yesterday, made a couple of really nice key saves. And like I said, RSL played well. They acquitted themselves well against a team that, frankly, is probably a little bit better than they are right now, at least on paper, and it was a road game. So that'll be coming up on Saturday right here on ESPN 700. Utah Royals will be at home on Friday, so Laura Harvey's team will be there. Monarchs will be home this weekend, too. So if you're really feeling your soccer stuff this weekend, you got 3 opportunities to see some good high-level professional soccer Friday and Saturday at Rio Tinto and out at the Zions Bank facility where the Monarchs call home. Basketball tonight, playoff basketball. You've got the Philadelphia 76ers against We the North, the Toronto Raptors. That's a 6 o'clock start time. We'll have that one for you here right after Gunther and Ben on ESPN 700. Philly's down in that series 1-0, and Portland and Denver open up their series tonight in the Mile High City of Denver. That game starts at about 8:30, which means it'll start at about 8:45. We all know that those games never start on time. TNT, so you'll get to see Kenny and Chuck and Shaq and Ernie doing their thing tonight. Here's an interesting note, by the way, or 2 interesting NBA notes. One, Sam Presti said today he expects Billy Donovan to return as the Oklahoma City coach. Well, unless Billy leaves on his own, that's really up to Sam Presti, I think. So if Sam Presti wants him back, Billy Donovan will be back. And I'm not so sure Billy Donovan was the issue. They've got to find a better way to be able to play with those 2 guys, with Russell Westbrook and Paul George. They play a lot of hero ball on that Thunder basketball team, and they're a better team. Everybody's a better team when the ball pops and moves. That's something they're going to have to solve in the offseason. And Greg Popovich. Reports out of San Antonio say Pop is negotiating himself a new deal with the San Antonio Spurs. Just finished up his 23rd season with the Spurs. The team has made the playoffs in each of the last 22 seasons. That's a streak that ties for the longest in NBA history. There's a little speculation he might not return, but Pop's 70, and I wouldn't guess Pop is 70. He plays himself a little bit younger than that. And he's got a decent foundation with that team. I would guess that if they could make another key offseason addition, that they could be a playoff team a year from now and set that record of 23 consecutive seasons. But that's big news for Greg Popovich, and that's probably bigger news around the place, too, because there have been some speculation, at least in the college basketball ranks, that Bill Self at the University of Kansas might be leaving Kansas to take San Antonio over when Popovich retired. Bill Self and R.C. Buford, their GM, are very good friends. But if Pop is re-signing, again, just because you sign a new contract, that would likely mean he's back next year. But that, you can retire at any point in time, anytime you get tired of it. I will say, though, I said this earlier in the show today, it's still a bit of a mystery to me how the San Antonio Spurs, as high a basketball IQ as you'll find in the NBA and as good a head coach as you'll find anywhere, period, didn't know to foul down 4 with under 30 seconds to play. They let that thing go and go and go and go and go, and then by the time they got it back, it was too late. So I'm sure that's something that will bother Popovich this offseason, and assuming he comes back, something he'll probably have to address at some point in time. So anyway, those are a couple of news and notes from the day in sports for you today here on ESPN 700. Found out from Mitch, we're going to be joined tomorrow on the program by Dennis Dodd. He of CBSSports.com, their college football insider. Dennis put out his way too early, updated top 25 poll for next college football season, post-spring football practice. And he's got the University of Utah sitting at number 12 in his poll, which is, again, I've said this before and I'll say it again. I think Utah, you can make a case for them somewhere between 10 and 15. I think Brett McMurphy of the stadium, and Watch Stadium, had him at number 10. Dennis has got him at number 12. I think when the preseason poll comes out, they'll probably be because remember, the preseason polls voted on. I'm talking about like the AP preseason poll, and that's people all over the country voting. I think they'll probably be somewhere between about 12 and 16 in the preseason poll, which is, again, where I think they should be. If you've got Utah between 20 and 25, I think you're making a mistake. They're a better team than that. I really believe that. So anyway, Oregon at number 10. Utah at number 12, Washington at number 15, and Washington State at number 21. That, I'm telling you right there, that's the team to keep an eye on. We make fun of Mike Leach for his idiosyncrasies and his weirdness at times. He's crazy like a fox. But the guy has finally figured out the defense has to go with the offense. They've had terrific defenses the last 2 or 3 years up on the Palouse. We know that he can find quarterbacks because he's done that year after year. He found Gardner Minshew last year. They've got now Eastern Washington transfer quarterback Gabe Gabrud. I don't know how you say that guy's name, but he played at Eastern Washington, was very prolific there. He can coach, and Tracy Calais is a good defensive coordinator, took Alex Grinch's spot. So we haven't mentioned them, but I've said this a number of times. They might be the team to beat in the Pac-12 North. I think Utah is definitively the team to beat in the Pac-12 South. I think they could win the Pac-12 South by 2 games. But I do think the Pac-12 North is up for grabs. We had Jake Heaps on, and Jake said, yep, Washington's his pick. And I would not doubt Chris Peterson for a minute. But replacing 15 overall starters is a big ask. Oregon's got questions. Wazoo's got questions. I think those are the 3 teams. Yogi Roth is in Phoenix today. That's where the Pac-12 meetings, their spring fling is going on in Phoenix right now. Thought we'd wrap up the draft and take a look. And I think you've hit just about every spring football camp too, haven't you, Yogi?
Yeah, I got to most of them. I usually don't get to Wazoo, but we just did a feature that came out last night on Mike Leach, where I went to class with him. And so I got to watch practice as well. And if you haven't seen that feature, check it out at pac-12.com, man. It's hilarious. Classic.
I got to ask, I mean, you and I, we talked about this at dinner a couple of weeks ago when you were in for the spring football game. There's all the talk of Oregon and Washington in the North. I've said time and again, don't sleep on Washington State. If this kid from Eastern Washington comes in and can compete and be good, I wouldn't write Washington State out of the possibility of winning the North. You've been up there. You've seen them. What do you think?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'd agree. I mean, their schedule, the way it lays out, will potentially present some challenges. But the thing that I think never gets discussed is, Gage Gabrut, of course, as you referenced, he's kind of the sexy pick, and he looks the part. I had a chance to talk to him, got to sit in on quarterback meetings, and he's a really impressive guy. But Garner didn't win the job dramatically last year, and he went on to be the Pac-12 Offensive Player of the Year. Trey Tinsley, Anthony Gordon. You talk to Mike Leach and anyone on that staff, they're like, he was really close. And nobody knew. You remember that Wyoming game early in the year? We couldn't really tell. Even the Eastern game, we couldn't tell that Garner was going to be what he was. It wasn't until really that Utah game I thought that he bursted out into the scene, in late September, and the week before he probably played his most complete game up to that date. So I don't know who the QB will be, but the thing that's real is that they recruit guys with chips on their shoulder, and they develop it. So I look at Willie Taylor, who's, I think, an all-conference edge rusher. And those types of players now, they were playing as redshirt freshmen. They're third-year or fourth-year players now. The receiving core is the deepest in the Pac-12, and I'd say other than SC, it's a notch below them in terms of the talent and the ceiling of the players making plays. Bring back Max Borghi, which David Shaw wanted to have at running back, and remind you of C-Mac, Christian McCaffrey. So you're right. They're going to be a team that no one will vote first, but I wouldn't be shocked if they won.
Pick Six, you mentioned something about Wazoo chips on the shoulder. I think Utah does that a little bit too. Pick Six previews came out this morning and said from 13 to 19, the 2013 to 2015 recruiting classes, and then the 17, 18, and 19 draft classes, nobody's done a better job in college football, D1 college football, of developing talent and sending them to the next level than Utah. You've been around Utah's program enough. What do you think, as a guy that observes college football, what do you think that magic sauce is for Kyle Whittingham, and why he, from back in the Mountain West days and the staff and now carrying it to the Pac-12, have done such a good job of identifying talent early and then developing it and getting it to the next level?
Well, number one, you referenced the identification of it. They take guys similar to Washington State that maybe not be finished products in high school, right? So it's why they're not all at the opening or five-star guys. Some are, like Javelin Guidry and Jalen Johnson, but some aren't, right? Like Bradley and I think he's the best defender coming back in the conference this year. So you look at that and I say, wow, what's the culture like? And then you hear about other programs trying to take their strength and conditioning coach. It starts to make sense when you start to see guys coming off of the Kyle tree. When I was at SC, their defensive line coach came from that tree. You hear guys talk differently about the game. And I think it reflects in the players, because what I see their players is their guys love to play. They don't just love what playing can do for them, which is making money at the next level, Instagram likes, double taps, etc. They really love the craft. And I think Kyle's no-nonsense approach in that regard of you're either, quote, in or in the way, which is my favorite quote in the Pac-12 from head coaches. I think guys really live it. I don't know if there's an intimidation factor there or what, but kids, they develop, they work their tails off, and they perform and do it with a great culture. And I think you go back to the most diverse team in college football. I think that helps. You got a maturity, guys coming off their mission. Some are married with kids. You have some immaturity, but a lot of talent. So you see guys play well young, like Guidry and Johnson, for instance, when they were young players. Julian Blackman playing safety when Marcus Williams went down as a young player. So I think it's a lot of those things combined, but it's as impressive as I've seen, and I think their team is the most impressive I've seen in terms of coming from Utah. And I'm sure we'll talk about it, but I think they're, today they're my pick to win the Pac-12 South.
Yogi Roth's our guest from the Pac-12 Networks. He's down in Phoenix at the Pac-12 Spring Fling, probably going to be meeting and hanging out with some coaches and folks and administrators that are down there this week. Speaking of culture, you were part of a great culture at USC when you were on Pete Carroll's staff. Pete's carried that to the NFL. He's won a Super Bowl, competed for another at Seattle. So he knows what it's like to build a good culture, and that's part of it. He drafted 2 Utes this year, one in the second round, one in the third round. He took Marquise Blair. He took Cody Barton. You know both those guys from their time at Utah. You know Pete and the system that he's got at Seattle very well, and the culture. Why are those guys good fits, and were you surprised he took those guys?
Not surprised at all. I thought he was going to go either Blair or Rapp at that spot. Couldn't have gone wrong either way, and Taylor Rapp from UW ended up, I think, the next pick to the Rams. But when you watch Pete, and I told this story on the Pac-12 networks over the weekend, if you go to a pregame, and any fans that are going to follow the Utes in Seattle, go do this. In warm-ups, he'll play safety, right? In terms of he'll stand 20 yards behind the guys and break on the ball. He'll do it in practice, too. And I say that because he thinks that he can still play, like we all do in our own warped brains. And he loves guys that can thump. And how many times do we hear Morgan Scalley say that about the safety that's now going to Seattle? I mean, he's just a thumper. And this is a guy who's going to thrive in that system. The culture is going to elevate his game dramatically because he's still got elements of being raw at the position, and he's going to crush it on special teams. And Pete has not only built that thing once, but this is the second rebuild on the Seahawks. I mean, they wiped a clean slate last year, and at times were playing some of the best football in the league. Now they come back again. They drafted really well. He's going to love the culture. He's going to love the secondary coach, Nick Sorensen. He's going to love Kenny Norton Jr., the D coordinator. And then you talk about Cody, and my best friend, I don't know if you know this, my best friend in life is a guy named John Glenn, who's my high school quarterback, who's now the linebacker coach in Seattle. So I talked to John as the draft was going on, and he was so excited for Cody and his opportunity to come in and play and impact on special teams. And he's a perfect guy for that culture. And I can remember Kyle talking about Cody week 1 last year saying nobody's gotten the most out of their entire body of work than Cody Barton. So that's a classic Pete Carroll fit. He and John Schneider, they've got another special thing going. They're going to be there for a while, and I hope more and more guys from the Pac-12 get the opportunity to play for the Hawks.
Utah had their specialists go. Wisnowski and Gay both got good spots. They're going to get guaranteed money, too. And then Jackson Barton ends up with the Indianapolis Colts. One guy that didn't get drafted, and I think it was a little bit of an age and a little bit of an injury thing, but he did sign a free agent contract as Chase Hansen. He'll go to New Orleans to try and make the team in New Orleans. You already have Marcus Williams down there, and Sean Payton is a guy that likes versatility. He's got Taysom Hill doing a bunch of different things. What's Chase got to do? Is it just as simple as stay healthy in your mind, Yogi, to make that team?
Yeah, I can remember talking to guys in the league about him as the draft was getting going and just saying, oh, man, I would take him. And you're right. You nailed it, the two concerns. And age not as much, but injury. He laid it all out on the line. I mean, he's like the Travis Wilson version of defense. You look at Utes just kind of competing and putting their body on the line every single snap. That's what he did. That's who he is. So I think if he can get healthy, and it sounds like he is, you were there at Pro Day, he's going to make a team. He's just going to. It's just who he is. He's going to play, and that's the way the league is. I mean, it's a long season, and he's going to contribute. He's going to be the smartest guy in the room. I look at Ben Burke-Herbert and him, and, the reason the Seahawks drafted BBK was because he could fly sideline to sideline and play this new age style of defense, and specifically the NFC West. I look at the league, where the Saints are, the offenses they have to face, another similar type of player who doesn't have to come off the field. Could be a 3-down overhang outside backer, physical enough to play inside if he had to on long downs and distances. So I'm a fan, man. I would put my money on him making a roster.
All right, last thing I wanted to ask you was about Josh Rosen. He was a Pac-12 guy, drafted highly a year ago by Arizona. Coaching change, new coach comes in. He wants his kind of quarterback. Josh took a lot of shots when he was at UCLA for being outspoken. People called him cocky and arrogant, things like that. I thought he handled this situation great, Yogi, and he falls to a spot now where he'll be kind of the guy in Miami. Just a little bit about Rosen, and is this something that can help him grow, and do you like his spot now in Miami?
Yeah, I actually just texted him right when I got off the plane. Just good luck. I'm so happy for you. And I think Josh has gotten a raw deal his whole life. I've known Josh since he was 15, and I think he's just gotten – I mean, think about what he's done, right? He didn't get arrested. He's never been driving under the influence. He's never had an altercation with a female. I mean, the guy's a pillar. He's been great at school, back to finish his degree. He can talk about things outside of football and has interests outside of them that aren't typical of maybe an athlete. So he just gets roasted. And, okay, maybe take the hot tub incident, but everything else, he spoke his mind in a way that didn't really hurt anybody. Now, some of it immature, fair, and he's wore that criticism. But I look at him and say, you know what, this guy's been a total team guy. And I remember talking to Larry Fitzgerald during the season, and I said, Fitz, what's he like? And he goes, after every flight, we sit next to each other at a road game, and we just talk about life, talk about politics, talk about the world. We don't talk football, but he's not buried in his phone, in his own brand, in his own Instagram, like majority of, young players at the professional level, let alone college. And I think that's Josh. And he got a standing ovation yesterday at Larry's softball tournament. here in Arizona, his last day here before heading to Miami. So I'm looking forward to him getting a fresh start. He's going to thrive. He's a franchise quarterback, in my opinion. He did special things. Now you look at that division, how fun is that? You got Sam Darnold, you got Josh Allen, you got Josh Rosen. I mean, it's going to be fun to watch those guys compete against each other, not to mention Tom Brady over the next 2 to 20 years. Who knows how long some of these guys will end up playing.
Biggest question you have about Utah football heading into fall camp is?
Well, I think that the new O-lineman, that's an obvious one. But the only downfall to them, I went and kind of studied some of the other, perennial powers. And the difference between them and like a Bama, for instance, or a Clemson, it's just their depth at those key spots. At the D-line, they're loaded. They got 11 deep. They can roll. I mean, they got some dudes we never heard of that I went to spring practice and was like, wow, they play everywhere, and every coach in this conference would want them. But the O-line, they just got to stay healthy. And I think offensive line, as you saw even at times last year, when they did struggle to run the football, it wasn't often, but it was a lot of guys playing on the O-line at separate times, a bunch of different centers. UW had dealt with that last year. So I think it's the gelling of that group. And Jim Harding's as good as they get, so I'm not nervous about it. But that's the biggest cause for concern, because if you lose a guy, 2 guys, then what happens? They've proven they've got receiver depth that will compete in this conference. I don't think anybody's going to demand double coverage outside of third down in Britton Covey today. They got an elite back, so you're not going to be able to just stack the box, because Tyler Huntley, to me, looked his best. But can they protect? Can they do it all game long against the real teams? And their schedule isn't simple. They got difficult tests on the road that we know, what those games are going to be. But they'll get everybody's best, because that's kind of where they are now. And I look forward to that. And I do think that they got a chance to not only be the South champ, I think they can win it all. And I think today, with the size, the strength, the ability, they got a chance to represent this conference in the college football playoff. And I don't think that's a Pollyanna look. I picked them last year to win the South. I'm going to pick them again unless something dramatic happens between now and media days. But they've earned it. They built this program on all the principles we referenced earlier with Coach Whittingham, and I think it'll come to fruition if they can stay healthy. So I think that's the biggest thing, a wide receiver. Then maybe if one of those big receivers, whether it's Johnson or whether it's Solomon, can they be a dude? Can they really be a dude in this conference when they need to be? I think a lot of teams have that question, like Ty Jones at UW. Can he be that guy? Michael Pittman Jr., can he be that guy? And if they can answer those, then they'll be all right.
Have fun in Phoenix. Thanks for coming on today. Talk to you soon.
Thank you, sir. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Yogi Roth, with us here on the Bill Riley Show today here on ESPN 700. Today's show being brought to you by Everest Collision Repair. Did you do any damage to your car over the weekend? Did somebody else do some damage to your car over the weekend? A dent, a scratch, a fender bender? Whether it was your fault or not, the car still needs to be fixed. And you want somebody that's going to do a great job and make your car look brand new again. Well, that's what they do for you at Everest Collision Repair. They make the dents, the scratches, the dings, they make them go away, and they make your car look brand new again. They're locally owned, locally operated, been in business for a long time. I can speak to them because it was about this time a year ago that I did damage to my car. I didn't know where to go. I didn't have a body shop. So somebody here at work said, hey, try Everest Collision Repair. They do good work. I did, and they did great work. Walked me through the process. They dealt with my insurance company. They got me into a rental car and had my car back and looking better than it really was even before the accident. That's what they did for me at Everest Collision Repair. So go online if you don't believe me, or maybe you just want a little bit more reinforcement. I'm okay. Get a second opinion. They've got testimonials online. I won't be offended. I promise you, though, they do great work. EverestCollisionRepair.com, Salt Lake, Sandy, and Tooele, their locations. Tell them I sent you in. Bill Riley from ESPN 700 sent him in to Everest Collision Repair. Steve Bartle next. We'll go into the portal with the Bartle here on ESPN 700.
It's time to jump into the portal, the Bartle Portal, here on the Bill Riley Show. Steve Bartle of UteZone.com has the latest scoop on everything with the Utes, both on and off the field, from games to recruiting. The Bartle Portal is always talking Utah sports, here on the home of the Utes, ESPN 700.
Utah got a grad transfer today, an offensive lineman. I figured we'd get the skinny on that from Steve Bartle of UteZone.com. The portal joining us here on the Bill Riley Show. They went into the portal, Steve Bartle, to grab this offensive lineman. What can you tell us about Marshall transfer, Alex Locklear.
Yeah, Bill, this is a pretty good pickup. They wanted to add a grad transfer offensive lineman, and really how this should be viewed. Whittingham talks a lot about having 8 or 9 guys on the offensive line that he trusts to provide depth, and I think the immediate impact that he brings, he is a depth guy with the possibility, with the chance of becoming a starter on the inside at either of the guard spots. Now, obviously, Bam Olaseni coming in, Braden Daniels, being in the program for this is now his second year. Those guys are probably the most likely candidates of who he's going to be competing with. I give them the edge, obviously, but this is a good pickup because it addresses depth, which for Utah this upcoming season, that's what they need to do. They need to cover up all the cracks, and this helps them, in their potential Pac-12 title run of just having depth on the offensive line. And 6'5", 330-pound offensive lineman, a nasty player. He's really good in the run game. This is a good pickup, especially considering the fit in Andy Ludwig's offense with the run game.
Did I read correctly, though, only 2 starts in his Marshall career?
No, you read incorrectly.
Okay.
It was 3, but he's played in 35 games.
That's weird, though. I mean, you 4 years as an offensive lineman and only 3 starts?
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. I think, the thing with that is, Harding and the staff, they have access to more film with practice, and maybe they saw something that they liked in him. And, with the transfer portal, it's become apparent that you kind of have to know in advance of a player entering the portal and have an in with the player in order to land said player. And so they were working, behind the 8 ball with a lot of these other players in the transfer portal. And so to pick up a player like this, he had interest from programs in the Big Ten and the SEC. Tennessee wanted him. His brother plays there. So he comes from a talented family of big boys. But yeah, there was definitely interest at the P5 level in him.
What kind of a bump? We always talk about this, but I'm curious. Does Utah get any bump sending 9 guys to the NFL, 5 guys drafted? Do they feel that in recruiting? I know it's a point that they sell, but have you ever been able to put a tangible number or percentage or be able to evaluate how this NFL thing works in recruiting?
Yeah, I actually wrote a piece on that very thing over the weekend, and when you look at it over the years, going back to 2012, Utah's 5-7 seasons, it seems like it's gone in years of 3, in periods of 3 years or so. Each year, Utah has improved on the recruiting trail. They've improved in their wins. They've improved their draft picks. And you look at it this last year, they just won the South Division. They just signed their highest-rated average in terms of the average rating of their recruits. And they just sent 5 players into the NFL draft. And then you look at the opportunity next year in the NFL draft. Utah has a pretty impressive 2020 draft class. There are 12 players that could potentially be drafted, depending on how they perform this season. That's a pretty impressive number, and that does translate on the field and in the recruiting. So check it out. It is a free article that I wrote at UteZone. It's Utah football trending up in every valuable way. There is a correlation between draft success, on-the-field success, and recruiting success, and I tried my best to provide a breakdown of how that actually looked like.
All right, last thing for you. Who's going to be the first football player from Utah taken in the 2020 NFL Draft, Bartle? You just mentioned it. There's probably 4 guys that could be late first, early second, mid-second round picks, depending on what kind of a year they have this year. But if you're betting today, who's the guy you're betting on?
Jalen Johnson, without question. I know, Lecky Fotu, he's a monster, and with a great season, he could be the first selection next year. Julian Blackman, even as a safety, it was interesting, and I got to brag real quick, Bill. At what I say, who would be the first selection? It was Marquise Blair in the draft, so I'm going to pat myself on the back for that one. But when you look at the safety position, a key piece to safety prospects moving on to the NFL is they have to be versatile. They've got to be able to cover in zone and man schemes. They've got to be able to cover, the center field, and they've got to be able to cover in man situations, which, with Julian's experience at cornerback, that's a big draw for a lot of these NFL teams. They're looking for versatile safeties that can do a bit of everything. And Julian Blackmon, if he goes out and has the year that we all think he's capable of, he's looking at a really good opportunity next year in the draft. So, Utah's got 3 guys that I think could be NFL first-round picks, but I have the most confidence in saying Jalen Johnson will be the first one selected.
I'm going to say Lecky Fotu because I'll use this year as an example. There were 6 defensive tackles taken before the first corner was taken. There's a premium on guys that can play inside and do more than just eat up blocks. He's got athleticism that I don't even know that Star Lotulelei had on measurables. He's taller than Star, and he's got longer arms than Star. Star went 13 and would have gone higher had it not been for those heart issues that were reported right before the draft. I think that Lecky's going to be a first-round pick because I think defensive tackles, especially guys with his measurables and skill set, are hard to come by. I think Jalen will be probably second, but I think if I had to say today and base it on what we saw this year, there were a lot of good corners in this year's draft, but the first corner didn't go until the 30th pick, and that was DeAndre Baker of Georgia. And then Byron Murphy, who was fantastic this year for Washington, was the first pick of the second round.
I don't disagree. I think that a player that Lecky compares to best is actually Jerry Tillery of Notre Dame, who went 28th to my Chargers. Kind of similar frame, 6'6", 300 pounds, right around there, tremendous athlete. The key for Lecky, and I think this is where Jalen has the advantage, is he's already produced at high levels. He's got 4 interceptions last year, one of which he returned for a touchdown. Not that Lecky hasn't produced, but he's really got to put up some good numbers his senior year, especially considering the talent that he has around him on the defensive line. I think that's going to be the key, for Lecky Fotu to really establish himself as, a first-round defensive tackle selection. He's got to put up numbers this year, which obviously we all think he can. He's got the attributes. He's got the physical traits that you love and you share and that you covet. So it's just a matter of him going out on the field and producing, and it's up to him to achieve that. But I think Utah's got a really good draft class next year, and you can't go wrong with any of those guys.
All right, that's Steve Bartle. Read his free article up at utezone.com. Listen to him here. And by the way, thanks for pinch hitting for me last week, Bartle.
No problem, Bill. Always glad to do it. It's fun filling in with Porter, and thanks for every opportunity, Bill. Appreciate you.
Talk to you soon.
Yep.
There you go. Steve Bartle with us here from Ute Zone and Ute Zone Radio here on The Bill Riley Show.
It's time for today's topical trivia test on The Bill Riley Show, presented by Bad Apple. Bill will give out a question on a topic from today's show. If you call in at 877-353-0700 with the correct answer, you win a prize. Now let's get today's topical trivia test question on Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700.
All right, here's what we got for you today. A gift card to Freebird's World Burritos and a 4-pack of tickets to see RSL and the Portland Timbers coming up on Saturday at the Riot, 7 o'clock start time. Had my good friend Everett Gray, basketball insider, on with us last hour, and I asked Everett if he could take one player in the NBA today to take the last shot at the end of the half or the end of the game. Who would it be? Who would be that guy that he would have take that last shot? If you know the answer, dial up right now. 877-353-0700. That's 877-353-0700. Who's the guy Everett Gray said would be his last second shot taker in today's NBA? Mitch will get your answer. We'll give you that prize pack if you get it right. Phone lines are open to you right now at 877-353-0700. A little crosstalk with Gunther and Ben coming your way next, right here on ESPN 700.
It's almost 2 o'clock, which means the Bill Riley Show is coming to an end, and Gunther and Ben are getting ready for your drive home. The shows will now collide on Crosstalk. Now here's Bill Riley, Kyle Gunther, and Ben Anderson on Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700.
Bart Baird from Hiram. We're huge in Hiram. Bart, thank you for listening today. He knew that Kevin Durant was the guy that Everett Gray would want having the ball in his hand at the end of the game. Not Dame Lillard, who he likes an awful lot, not Steph Curry. He wants the ball in the hand of Kevin Durant, and that was the answer to topical trivia. He's got a nice gift card coming from Freebirds and 4 tickets to see Real Salt Lake and Portland coming up on Saturday. Time for a little crosstalk. That means Gunther and Ben are in studio. It's brought to us by Fink and McGregor, mortgages made simple. Where do we start, guys? Let's start with the draft. The Utes had 5 guys taken, 9 guys all told signing some sort of a contractual deal. Another great year, Kyle Gunther, for Kyle Whittingham. Pick 6 preview says the number 1 team in college football the last 6 years at developing talent, over-developing, under-seeded or starred players out of high school. You were part of that program. This is the same model they used when you played in the Mountain West. Why are they so good at this? What makes Whittingham and Scally and these guys so good at identifying talent and then developing it? Because you were almost there. They developed you into a pro career. You did have a pro career.
Well, Bill, I came in underdeveloped. So they had a long way to go with me. But the secret is HW. Hard work, man. It's a cliche, but it is something that the Utes do differently than other schools. They get guys in shape. They put them in the right positions. But it's coaching acumen. Coach Witt knows where guys should be playing. That's why he recruits Paul Kruger as a high school quarterback and right away says, look at your frame, look at your dad. We're going to move you to defensive end, and he's made $20 million as a result.
Kyle Whittingham.
You think it's
the same attitude he has.
Is it the culture? I mean, are they just good at identifying the right guys, or is it just once they bring them into that culture that those guys then adapt to it and buy into it? Because it's got to be because there's a lot of schools that I was looking USC, UCLA. They're terrible. They get 4- and 5-star guys, and their hit and miss rates not very good. They send some guys on, but not at the level you would think they are.
Every single person on earth has drawn at some point in their life. There are only so many famous artists that we know of. There is just an elite eye that some people have. Leonardo da Vinci, Gore Vidal.
He's a writer.
Kyle Whittingham. These are people with an ability that is innate, that is different and better than the rest of us idiots.
I think it's Whittingham's attitude that players come in and they realize it's no BS. It's not Jim Mora's nonsense. It's not Jim Mora's a nice guy. There's a lot of nice guys that are coaches and do okay and recruit really well, but their attitude isn't legitimate. And Kyle Whittingham's attitude is legitimate. He is just very authentic. He expects you to come in and work as hard as he is, and you're never going to catch up to him as hard as he works. But if you try, you have a chance to go and play
maybe it goes
football.
back to the recruiting process. And Gunther was recruited by Kyle Whittingham. Maybe it's, I don't know Whittingham, but it was Whittingham's. But they don't lie to you. There's no I don't think there's a promise that you're going to be the starter here. We're going to promise you minutes. We guarantee you'll do. I think it's come in and work your ass off, and good things will happen.
Yep, and Witt's still pretty old school. And the NFL is a little bit more old school than is college football. It does not quite move as quickly ahead. So Witt is in a real sweet spot as far as how he plays, the style of play, the types of players he likes to go after. And then those kids translate to the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, you got to get the right players in, and then those guys go to the NFL. So Utah's recruiting correctly, and then Kyle Whittingham's backing it up on a day-to-day basis by being as hardcore as they come.
That doesn't mean Washington State's doing anything wrong because they don't get a bunch of guys drafted. Because their job is to win a bunch of college football games. Now, they had the first Pac-12 player drafted, the tackle, but they don't get a ton of guys drafted, but they win a bunch of college football games.
They're drafting a lot of the same guys Utah's been drafting. Because I was talking to Yogi a few minutes ago, and he says, they draft those guys that are not highly touted, kind of chip on the shoulder. Utah gets a lot of those chip on the shoulder guys that grew up in L.A. or Southern California that saw some of their teammates go to USC and UCLA and Oregon, and they got offers from Utah and San Diego State and Washington State. So they go in and maybe play with a little bit more of a chip on their shoulder.
But they're a little at Washington State's very gimmicky.
Yeah.
And Utah's just not gimmicky. Witt is not. He doesn't run gimmicks. He is just an old school football guy. Yeah, I know they run the spread, but everyone runs the spread now. I mean, they are what the NFL does. Witt's not trying to do anything wacky.
Bill, you look like you've been in front of a big bowl of chips in the sun. Like you've been in L.A. recently. You look like you got some R&R.
Yeah, I got, the RSL big win yesterday. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Did Zlatan come after you?
Zlatan. How about him threatening Natum on the field for like 30 minutes?
Yeah.
That's right.
And then walking into the locker room trying to apologize and then getting upset when Natum didn't want to have anything to do with him.
Crazy. But you like that attitude.
That's the only sport that you allow guys to hang out in the other team's locker room afterwards. That's just not a good idea.
I was going to say, why would you even walk into that locker room, even though you are Zlatan?
Right.
I mean, why wouldn't you just say, knock on the door and say, hey, See if Natum wants to come out and chat with me, or send your PR guy over. I'd love to chat and apologize for being a jackass or being Zlatan. I kind of wonder what that apology would have sounded like, too. I'm not sure how much of an apology it really would have been.
Zlatan apologizes.
I don't think you even would have said that.
Very, very heartfelt on
he
that
just would have
side of
said Zlatan apologizes.
They played well, by the way.
Yeah, they did.
The L.A. Galaxy are really good. They were in that game. They were the better team in the second half. They gave up kind of a little bit of a fluky goal, but other than that, they played okay. I think they're beginning to find their form just a little bit right now. They come back home, play a couple of games at home now.
Yep.
Should be
Krylak nearly got himself a goal. RSL missed out on a couple opportunities. Romano made a couple of big saves there. RSL is really close to being right on track with where they need, but they've had a couple of tough ones, including this weekend in L.A.
You guys want to answer my poll question today? Maybe you voted already. A year from now, 2020, who will be the first University of Utah player drafted? Who will be the first guy off the board for the Utes a year from now?
Jalen Johnson.
Yeah, I did vote, and it was
a first-round pick. He'll be potentially a top 10 pick. Jalen Johnson right now might be the best corner in next year's draft class. So he's going to be a first-rounder.
And I know your listeners overwhelmingly agreed.
I think it might be Leki Fotu.
Huh.
There were 6 defensive tackles taken in this year's draft before the first corner was taken. The DeAndre Baker kid from Georgia, who was really good, taken by the Giants, I think, 30th. There were 6 tackles, though, taken before him. We have compared Leki very similarly and favorably to a guy like Star Lotulelei. He's actually physically bigger and probably a little bit more athletic than Star. I look at that and say, okay, Fotu has a good year. It's hard to pass up 6'6", 320 that runs a 5 flat 40 and can do some of the things he does. Now, obviously, it's incumbent on having a good year, but there might be a little bit more of a premium on a guy that can be a havoc wrecker on the inside than there is even a good corner outside.
And next year's actually going to be a good cornerback class. There's supposed to be better corners, so you might just be in that. Greedy Williams fell to the second round. A lot of people thought he'd be a top 10 pick, but a couple of guys going in front of
Byron
you.
Murphy, people thought might be a first round. He was first pick taken in the second round. There might be a lot of guys.
You have one guy or two guys go in front of you, and then you slip out of the first round. Where if there's 5 tackles taken, you could still be the 5th best defensive tackle and still go in the first round.
I think the Utes could have 4 guys taken in the top 2 rounds next year.
Yeah, I think Utah's going to have 8 guys drafted next year, coming off 5 this year. Utah's been on an incredible run. They're right up there with the tops of every conference in the country. But, yeah, this is going to be a big year in 2019, the football season. But, yeah, the 2020 draft is also going to be kind to the Utes.
I think so, too. I think the four top guys, Moss, Fotu, Johnson, and if Bradley and I leads the Pac-12 in sacks again this year, he's probably a top 2-round pick, too.
Yep. And that's not to mention Manny Bowen and some of these other guys that you never know who's going to break out.
Well, Manny's played for 2 years in the Big Ten. I mean, maybe he's a second-round pick as well, maybe third round, but he'll certainly be, I think, probably drafted if he has a good year.
Javelin Guidry get himself drafted?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of names out there for Utah, and no one expected Jackson Barton to get drafted. So there's names out there that could certainly find themselves getting picked up.
What'd you make of the controversy in the Warriors and Rockets game yesterday?
Yeah, James Harden is a known flopper. And when you cry wolf so many times, sometimes the refs are going to miss that wolf. They're going to miss when there actually is a foul. There were fouls that should have been called, but he's the worst offender of flopping in the entire league.
Yeah, I think the first half they really blew a bunch of those calls, and those were pretty obvious against Klay Thompson. They absolutely should have blown those whistle. But I agree, James Harden has made himself very hard to officiate on purpose. He's trying to game the system to get the calls to go in his favor. And when you do that, you have to understand that you're trying to play this game that you can't totally control the outcome of, and that's hoping another official blows the whistle, and they just didn't in Game 1.
Well, here's the thing, though. If you're going to blow that whistle, that's fine, but then the Rockets can take that same approach against the 3 3-point shooters for the Golden State Warriors.
Absolutely.
Curry, Thompson, and Durant. If they get up in their landing area in space, too, you better swallow the whistle there, too.
Yep.
I think Game 2 is going to tell us how the rest of this series goes from an officiating standpoint, because I guarantee the NBA is gathering its officials together today to try and figure out how they're going to call this thing. And I think whatever we see in Game 2 is going to be how the rest of the series goes. Would you agree?
And this is the best time it could have happened for the Rockets. You want that to happen in Game 1, to have that bad officiating game, so then you can go back and fix it because they've got 3 days off before they play on Saturday. Or I guess they play on Wednesday. I can't remember exactly what the day is, but
I think it's Wednesday.
Wednesday. So they have nice, it's a 3-day break. That's a long break to get to the officials, send all the film in, say these are all the fouls, and these are where you need to fix it. You want to win Game 1 if you're the road team, but at least you had that bad game where now you can get on everybody, and there's a bunch of pressure now going to be on the league to go out and fix this problem.
I mean, you're within 4 points, and if 3 of those calls the league admits they missed, that's 9 free throws.
Right.
Harden's going to hit 8 of those 9. That's the difference in the game right there.
You still had the ball late with a chance to tie it up, after you got the steal from Kevin Durant. So,
what's on the show?
Jack Fulman from Pacific Takes will join us at 3 to talk about the Pac-12 overall and how they did in the draft. And then Andy Larson will join us at 4 to talk about some of the postseason NBA storylines.
All that coming up with Gunther and Ben. You guys enjoy. Dennis Dodd, who had an interesting piece today, updated his preseason top 25, had Utah at number 12. He'll join us tomorrow, and crossing the fingers that maybe Morgan Scally comes by as well. All right here on Utah's number 1 sports talk, ESPN 700.